Hello all, my name is Steve Jordans. I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto Scarborough, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about our Parallels app, an app that you can use to create conversational AI agents that are ultra realistic. We actually created this app originally because we were trying to work on issues of social anxiety that some students were having, and we wanted to create conversation partners that they could practice with. But it was very important to us that these conversation partners be as realistic as possible so that it really felt like, a real human conversation. And so we went to work, and part of what we did was sort of get rid of that helpful assistant persona that's so impervious with these agents, so that we could overlay more realistic personalities on top of that. And we kind of went from there to, really playing with the dynamics of the conversation, and then ultimately even adding an emotion system that allows our agents to simulate emotional states and react appropriately in terms of the changes in their emotional states based on what you say to them. Okay, so we are excited about this because we're trying to figure out great ways of using AI to enhance education. But as I've been talking about our work and talking about this app, we've received all sorts of inbound interest from all kinds of places, all kinds of people dealing with different challenges. And so we've decided to make this app generally available. And you're finding it here on this website. You have access to it. And the idea of this video is to kind of walk you through a little bit, get you started, get you rolling, to play with it if you want to. And so there we are, the Parallels app. This is my dashboard. Your dashboard will be much clearer here when you first come in here as you create Parallels, and that's what we call our agents, by the way, because they often provide an experience that runs parallel to something else. Like, for example, in my course, I'm teaching the course, I'm offering office hours, but at the same time, we've created this virtual Steve, and I might as well use him as my sort of example here, as a 24/7 office hour support that will answer students' questions anytime they have them. But it also can do some really amazing things. We can turn the tables. It can ask students questions. So students can say, hey, I just did a chapter on human memory. Can you quiz me on the things that I should know now? And Virtual Steve will quiz them in any way they like. Create multiple choice questions, whatever they wish. And so he's a very useful tool, I guess. It gets really tricky what you call these people, hims or hers or its or whatever. But I know the students have really embraced it and found it. And what one student said, this is a complete game changer for her. She feels like she has 24-hour support when she needs it. And so that's one use case that we're using. And I might as well just walk you through that a little bit and give you a sense of the app in this context. Okay, so when I come in, when I click on this, I have my overview. I'll set one up from scratch in a second, but I'll give you a sense. When we set up the Steve app, you can have a little bit of a description about what it's about. And now you can sort of choose a voice. Now my lab grabbed my voice from the internet, which is possible to do. So we do have, that grabbing a specific voice if you want it, or there's the whole range of voices from 11 Labs and some others that you can use. And you can sort of specify what kind of voice you would like this agent to have. Okay. The persona. This is where the sort of hard work is, or to some extent. This is essentially, think of it as your prompt, as you would for any LLM. There's going to be some stuff that happens in the background that we have learned that will make this prompt be realized in a slightly different way. It'll be much more realistic, much more human feeling than a typical, ChatGPT kind of prompt if you'd used it. But this is it, and it's basically saying, hey, you're Professor Steve Jordans, representative of the University of Toronto, a psychology professor, and it basically describes the context that he's working in. So basically that he's working as an office hours thing, things like this. Despite being an authority figure, you keep your office hours warm and welcoming, creating an environment where students feel valued and heard. These things all affect the tone and tenor of the agent. And so we throw some of those in, and then some of it's just specific information. The students you'll be talking to are currently enrolled in this course. Here's the things that they're taking, etc. And so it gives, a little bit of detail here. And notice now we have, options of personality, friendly. Why would you ever want combative? I'll come back to that. And verbosity. Do you want, so in this case it's low, he answers things in a pretty concise way. But you can adjust that. You can make it so that he, elaborates a lot more if you choose a higher level of verbosity. Okay. Now, largely, that's kind of all you have to do. Okay, but other things will happen, and there are other opportunities. So if we go to the chat in the setup, these are opportunities just about what you like do you want. In the case of Virtual Steve, there will be this. He will always say, hey there, great to see you coming to office hours. How can I help you? That's how he initiates the greeting. And so you can do that. You can have an initial message, or you can have it come up with an initial message. If you'd prefer something that varied a little more, it can do that as well. Similarly, with a goodbye message, you can have a sort of hard-coded goodbye message, or you can have it just say goodbye in whatever way it thinks is appropriate. You can set things like time limits, and the reason that we would do this in a Virtual Steve kind of situation is a student might keep the mic open and then walk away, and if we didn't shut it down after a time limit, it could continue to consume AI minutes and such, and so the student can always come right back if they want, and we've set it at a 5-minute time limit. There's different amounts here that you can have. Remind the user after 10 seconds of silence. That means if there's 10 seconds of silence, the AI will sort of speak up and say, do you have any other questions, anything you'd like to do? And of course, you can set that as you want. We specify the target audience, we specify the location, and then we have a section on guardrails. So, typically you're going to not allow any of these things, and you can add some other things here if you want. And this is an example of some of the guardrails that we would use in that case. Maximum content strikes, no limit. Do you want to show the transcript as they're speaking? Do you want to enable copying the transcript? Do you want to enable resetting the transcript? So this is literally as they speak, and everything we do is conversational. And we do that on purpose. We're interacting with students, and we think the students have gotten a lot of bad habits by texting all the time. They're not comfortable, generally, in synchronous situations, synchronous conversations, especially if it's with a human. They're more comfortable with an AI. And so that's why we want them to gain practice getting information through conversation, through real-time conversation. And that's what this is all about. So you'll see that happens, and as it happens, there's a transcript that's generated. And do you want them to see that? Do you want them to be able to copy that if maybe they're pasting their transcript in for an assignment or something like that, etc.? Do you want them to be able to reset it? Do you want them to rate the chat? This just says that if you are a user like me, I'm Steve, when I create these parallels, if I have this on, then when I'm chatting with them through this interface, it will know it's me, and it'll reply to me as Steve and react to me as Steve. The first time it did that, my developer did that, it freaked me right out. Like, how does it know who I am? But that's because of this user awareness. And then you have things like this. Do you want the user to speak first, or do you want the parallel to speak first? So our parallel will speak first, but in some use cases, you want the user to speak first. And then sometimes you want the conversation just to start as soon as there's any audio input. Okay, so you have control over things like that. These examples are generated automatically, and they're very good. You can go in and you can delete any of these things if you wish. So they're kind of, as you'll see, it's kind of like there's a conversation going on here, right? Where the user said something and Virtual Steve responded, and the user said something and Virtual Steve responded. And so we've got a little bit of a conversation, actually, a reasonably long conversation. Why? This really sets this kind of tone and tenor. It's kind of like the professor just had a conversation with another student before you came in. But now as you come in, that conversation that was just had, the way that Steve spoke to this student becomes the way he speaks to all students. And so we have some special sauce in the background that kind of based on your prompt and based on other settings in the system generates this. And that ends up really having a strong impact on how realistic that agent feels when you talk to them. If you want that feel to change, you can go ahead and add parts to this conversation, edit things, etc. But you really don't have to, for the most part. I would suggest, just thinking, no, let the system do it, because a lot of what we learned is baked into this. And so often when you change things, it's better not to. Let's say it that way. Okay, files. What's files about? Well, there's sort of two places where these agents can get information from. One is the large language models, right? And so when it's introductory psychology, Virtual Steve is helping people with introductory psychology, then it knows most of that from LLMs, right? It brings that information forward and knows almost all there is about psychology. In fact, I will openly admit it knows more than I do. Every intro psych prof has weaknesses. Mine is biology. It doesn't have a weakness in biology. And so sometimes in class, I am actually interacting with Virtual Steve for it to help me answer detailed biological questions for students. So at any rate, that's the sort of LLM knowledge it has, but if you want to augment that with specific knowledge. So for example, in my course, I could have fed it my syllabus. I could have fed it a deadlines file of all the deadlines for all of these things. We did not. We chose not to do that. Because I prefer them to go to the syllabus to get that. I prefer them to get that habit of going to the syllabus to get their specific information. And that also means if anything changes, we just have to change it on the syllabus one place, and we know the correct information is out there. And if there starts being too many files floating around, I don't like that. So, I don't have any specific information with Virtual Steve. Now, this said, we do have an agent named Artemis, who is a virtual zookeeper at the Toronto Zoo, and he answers questions about the otters at the otter exhibit. And in that case, he needs some specific information. He needs to know who these otters are, when they came to the zoo, stories about things they've done, because the people who are there, they want to know about otters in general, but they want to know about these otters in specific. And so we can feed it some files, and I could show you Artemis, and you would see that there's a bunch of files that we feed it here. And you could just enable files, and then you add those files that you want it to know. Okay, now here's where things get really kind of different. Emotion. Now you see it's not in play here. With Virtual Steve, we don't feel that it really is that necessary in this context. But when we started doing this, we again wanted these natural flowing conversations, things where what you said would change the emotional state of that agent, and it would react a little differently so that we would feel an emotional flow. Again, for office hours, you don't really need this, but for a good conversation, you kind of do. And so what we can do, and now you can really bend things too, as I'll mention in a second. So if you enable the emotions, notice you can do things like this. Set an initial mood for Virtual Steve: happy, sad, angry, relaxed. Set his sensitivity to the words that are being said. So how sensitive is he to the language that's being said to him? What we mean by that is he starts in this initial emotional state, but his emotional state will change based on what you say to him. And so how sensitive is he to your words, and how sticky is he in terms of not wanting to leave that emotional state? Like how able is he to be moved around by your words? Okay, and you can set that, and you can also give the user feedback to see, so they can see how their words are affecting the agent. And then we have this enable rapport. I'm going to use this as a point right now to say, my developers are adding new stuff to this all the time. And so when you see the app, you're probably seeing features that I don't even have here. I don't know what this feature is. I'm going to have to ask my dev what that feature is. Why all of this in the first place? Well, it allows you to do some really interesting simulations. As an extreme, we have an agent that does de-escalation training, or could be used, I should say, for de-escalation training with police officers. So when you meet this individual, he's in a highly aroused, angry state, and your task now is to speak to him in the right way to bring him down, to bring that emotional state to a more relaxed one, less dangerous one, so to speak. That's the kind of thing you can do. As a more sort of boring example, imagine you were training a sales team and you gave them a sales book. Here's what I want you to do. But before they interact with clients, you would like them to interact with AI clients. And you want to vary the personality of those AI clients. And so, maybe some of them are angry, maybe some of them are sad, and you're going to try to sell to these different people and convince them of something. You can really vary between this and, if you remember on the persona down here, their general personality, friendly or combative. Remember, I said, why would you want combative? Well, maybe you want someone that thinks you're trying to sell to them and is going to resist it a little more. You can do that with these agents. Okay, almost through this. Then the avatar. So our sort of generic avatar is a sort of happy face emoticon that changes as a basis of his emotional state. If he gets angry, his face changes to become more angry, etc. But it's a very simple avatar, and it's one that everybody knows and is quite comfortable with. But you can create custom avatars as well, and you can have those appear when anyone's interacting with your agent. That's the setup part. Okay. Beyond that, all I'll say is once you have an agent in gear, and so this is Virtual Steve, you can see how many chats are going on. There was a midterm right around here. And so you see people are using the midterm, 307, 271 chats a day. They're working this guy pretty hard, coming and seeing him. And if you want to actually see, well, what's going on in these chats, you have the logs here, the transcripts. And so you can see, do you know about chemistry? Someone's asking at chemistry stuff, acids and bases. Okay, that's not the best. Someone's trying to use it for chemistry. Let me try to find one where it's a little more biochemical dysphoria, a real thing. Okay, so sure. So now they're talking about all this stuff, and you notice, it's asking questions. Virtual Steve is giving nice, long, decent answers, etc. Larger point being, you have all these transcripts available. These are all anonymous chats, by the way. They just, the students just go and chat away. And so when you're building your thing, most of it is with the setup. Again, the history allows you to sort of see it in action. The chat now just allows you to actually go ahead and interact with that bot you've been creating. I'm not going to do this much for Virtual Steve. I'll just give you the sense of how that part works.
Hey there, great to see you coming to office hours. How can I help you?
Yeah, I've been struggling with this concept that the prof was talking about, and it was around attention, and it was something called like top-down attention versus bottom-up attention. I wonder if you could explain that to me a little better.
Of course, let's talk about it. Top-down attention is when you actively focus on something based on your goals or what you're trying to achieve, like searching for your car keys. Bottom-up attention, on the other hand, happens automatically when something grabs your attention, like a loud noise or a bright flash. Does that help?
Yeah, so the professor kept talking about onsets, the importance of stimulus onsets. How does that relate to this?
Good question. Stimulus onset refers to the moment something new appears in your environment, and it's crucial for bottom-up attention because our brains are wired to notice sudden changes. Those onsets grab our attention automatically, like a survival mechanism to spot potential threats or important events.
So they would grab our attention even if our top-down attention was searching for our keys, for example. We could get distracted from that?
Exactly. Even if you're focused on finding your keys, a sudden loud sound or a bright light could automatically pull your attention away because it's your brain's way of ensuring you don't miss something important or potentially threatening.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's very helpful.
Thanks for coming in, and all the best with your studies.
All right, so you get the idea there. I wanted to do that for a couple of reasons, just to kind of show it to you in action, hopefully to give you a sense that this was a very realistic feeling conversation, and also to give you a sense of some of the functionality, the way a student would use Virtual Steve here. So that's my big overview of things. When you were creating a parallel, you would start. I'm just going to cancel anything I might have done here. You would start by creating a new parallel, and getting busy with that, giving this information, and then everything will generate from here. I want to show you how easy that will be. So let's say we wanted a parallel that. What would you want? I don't know. It's so tricky just to come up with something offhand. Let's say you wanted one that would help you write songs. Okay? And so you might say, the songster. And you could have a description. This agent is very aware of all the best songwriters and the approaches they use to craft songs that are memorable and meaningful. He or she, I'll say he, other songwriters will ask him questions about how they should craft their songs. And he will always be helpful and friendly. Always be helpful and friendly. But I'll throw this in. Sorry, I'm friendly. But while also challenging the users to expand their knowledge and skills. Okay, so I just wrote that. I just made that up, right? You can make anything up. You can make this person, so let's say I want them to be, I'll say young, like we've gone to some young male singer-songwriter person that knows all this stuff. We'll call him American. And I guess we got Cleo.
Hey, I'm your virtual assistant from Retail AI, here to help you handle all the calls.
Hmm. 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 Maybe this will change when we go to create, but I don't know. Let's see. Let's just create. It's creating this agent, the songster. And then very quickly, once it does so, I will show you with the setup. You just typed in this stuff. I'm still curious about the voice. I don't know if I actually have to pick a voice. Maybe it just shows me. Oh, no. All right, I'll go back to my male voice for now. But at any rate, notice that it has generated this. Look at all this. Okay, and when you look at this carefully, like look, it's mentioned Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Max Martin. So it's actually pulled in some things, and it's made the persona for you. It's kind of built it out, pretty strongly. Selecting a personality, so it's probably the neutral by default, and the verbosity level. If you don't select, it'll just do whatever. This is your ability to kind of take control when you want it. But what I want to show you is I want to give you a sense of when I do very little. Okay, and so it's populated a bunch of these things based on all of our best use cases. It's created examples to kind of set the style of this person. No files enabled. I mean, we could do that. No emotion system enabled here. Don't need it usually in these sort of situations. Standard avatar. Okay, so if we now chat with this parallel.
Got it. Let's talk songwriting. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I've been working on this song for my granddaughter, and the song is all about, well, she's at that stage where she doesn't really want to smile for pictures and stuff, and so I want to write a song called Smile, where I try to kind of express how much positivity somebody can bring to the world, and how much more likable they are to others when they smile. So I'm wondering if you could, let's just try a verse first of all. Could you give me a sense of a verse that you might think would work well in that context?
Absolutely, Steve. Let's try something heartfelt and visual to set the tone. Here's an idea for your first verse. I see your face in the morning light, but there's a shadow where your smile used to shine bright. The world gets softer when you let it show. A little curve could change the way the wind might blow. What do you think? Does that capture the feeling you're going for, or should we tweak it?
All right,
Goodbye.
so I'm not going to continue with this, but you get the idea, right? Suddenly you have an agent that you can interact with as you're writing songs to do things up. Okay, I think that gives you the sense, if we now do history with this, we don't have history because I haven't pressed save yet on this. We're still doing the setup, but you would see the data, etc. Yeah, that's what we got. So if you want to play with it, go ahead and play with it. You can try creating something. You can go to our gallery from this website. You can interact with Virtual Steve and others that are there. And then ultimately, if you decide you want to put your agent in action, there should be a button somewhere here for that. All right. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.